Always digging for the story behind the story. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, and he talks about starting with why. And I think great learners do this as well. So you think about who decided that we all needed 8 glasses of water every day. Like, I had to know. It turns out that it's not even scientifically backed. And I think kids are also really good at this too. They never stop asking why. And somewhere along the way, we start giving up on those questions. And I make it a point with my own kids to protect that natural curiosity and answer all of the questions that they do have. And I think in this era of AI, where we can get the answer to any question in a second, the real value is knowing what to ask and how to think critically about the answers you get. And anyone can look up information, but not everyone can spot what's worth questioning in the first place.
Hello and welcome to Coach to Coach. We're so happy to have you back. And this week, we are talking about learner. This is honestly one of my favorite strengths out of all 34. I don't share this in the top 10 or top 5 as my guests do today, but I am so happy to have Lindsay and Jeff here to talk about this strength. Number 2 most common strength in the world in the top 5. And so many of you will relate to this strength, connect to it because it is in your top 10, and many more of us know learners. Everyone knows a learner. This is such a common strength. So Lindsay, I'll come to you first. Where are you coming in from? Tell listeners about yourself, and please give us your top 5.
Absolutely. So I am Lindsay. I'm tuning in from the Sacramento, California area. For the past 12 years, I've worked in healthcare at a Fortune 100 company focusing on learning, development, and HR. I became a certified strength coach in 2021, but my journey with strengths actually began in 2012, and I've been passionate about it ever since. My top 5 are positivity, maximizer, individualization, futuristic, and learner, with input coming in at number 6. I have not retaken the assessment. I think if I were to retake it, it might come in at number 1 or number 2. It's pretty high up there for me.
Thank you. And you know, there's such a debate on that retest, and should you go back and retake it, and will my results change, and what about? So I love to hear when our guests pop in with like, I haven't yet, but I could. and some wonder some wonder with how much us who are practitioners use, like, are we ruined? Like, will we just know the test so well we're going to game it? We'll be able to make it say. But either way, I am a fan of retest. I think there's some validity there that it helps to store. But well done. Most learners I know have taken it multiple times. So you're like hanging it. No, it said the first one's it's the one. So I'm holding on to that. And by the way, Lindsay and I are neighbors. High five from across the freeway there, Lindsay. We're in the same vicinity with each other. Jeff, how about you?
Well, I'm not in the same vicinity. I am based about an hour south of Chicago, so I'm checking in from the Midwest here at my location. And like Lindsay, I've been engaged with the strengths movement really since about 2000. And that goes back to when I began really using the tool, part of my doctoral studies and research, which we may get to later. But I've been a fan ever since, and often tell people after all these years, I enjoy it and value it even more than I did years ago. So love it and have a long history with that. And my top 5 are maximizer, strategic learner, individualization, and discipline.
Ooh, all right. So we have some similarities and differences here. Okay, so just for the sake of the conversation today, Jeff, are any of Lindsay's top 5 in your top 10? Positivity or futuristic, are any of those going to be down in there for you?
Yes, futuristic is 8, 9 for me. I think I've go back to check for sure, but it's clearly top 10. And so that was one of those, as I've studied it, as I go back to years ago when I took it, I thought, oh man, my strategic, surely I love planning. I love thinking about what do we do next. I'm already doing next summer in my head. So yes, I share that top 10 futuristic with Lindsay.
Very cool. And Lindsay, any of Jeff's in your top 10?
I do not have strategic or discipline, but I have the other 3.
Okay. So we have some similarities. Yeah, similarities and some wonderful variants here. Okay, so I'm gonna set up the scene. So two divergent sets of strengths that have met today to talk through one strength with all of its different faces and parts to it. Because learner is so common and so many of us have it, I think it's wonderful to hear from the two of you just on how you interpret learner for you. And because you're coaches, you have interpreted this for so many others. So please, as our experts today, Jeff, I'll come back to you. Tell us about learner and how you connect, why you love it, how it works. Go ahead and break us down.
Sure. Well, learner was always a natural for me because when I first encountered the strengths assessment, now called it Clifton Strengths, of course, I was in higher ed and I'm still in higher ed. And so for someone who spent their whole career in education, teaching, learning, training, those kinds of things, it made a lot of sense to me that would be in there because without knowing the terminology, it was just a part of who I was and how I'd really always been. And so made a lot of sense to me to see learner. And I, naturally feel like I'm right in the space that I need to be as a strengths coach and a university professor because I'm constantly getting to learn. I'm constantly getting to witness other people develop their learning. And so that space has always just been a natural fit for me. And, I'll be starting classes up here in a couple of days. I'm excited both because I get to keep learning, right? The content areas change, the examples change, all those things don't stay the same, even in the same course titles. And so for me, that's really been a key natural is that I get to do it as a learner in a learning environment, and I get to really hopefully enhance learning for, the 75, 80 that I have in a mix of different classes.
Thanks, Jeff. Lindsay, how about you?
Well, Jeff, I could relate a lot to what you were just saying. I've been naturally kind of geared towards this learning and development space, and have done that the majority of my career. And so I also love it. But looking back, I think my curiosity and learner was obvious from childhood. So our family regularly hosted exchange students and au pairs from around the world. We had one from Germany, Japan, Spain, China, and I was always peppering them with questions about their background and their cultures. I wanted to know everything, what brought them here, giving me the chance to experience their culture firsthand, and also want to know what food they ate. And it sparked this love of languages. And I've since traveled to over 40 countries. I lived abroad for 2.5 years in Europe, and I wasn't just sightseeing, but I was really diving into how people think and approach life differently. And I think it was just this curiosity and action. And throughout my life, I've just gravitated towards new experiences, a lot of variety. Every year I try a new sport. I did cross country, rowing, soccer, softball, swimming, a lot more. And then I switched my college major halfway through. I picked up 2 minors and I eventually earned my master's degree. And learning for me hasn't just been an activity. It's been this thread that runs through everything I do and keeping things fresh and engaging. And then in my role at my current company, I've been in I think 5 different areas. And it's just this natural itch every 2 to 3 years. Once I feel like I've mastered something, what's next? What's going to challenge me? What's been my journey with learning?
I love that both of you are keying so deeply into the curiosity of learning. And so I have to ask this question, and don't take offense, listeners or experts. But I have had one tell me at times, explain how learner is a strength, meaning if being curious and wanting to learn is something that I think many of us have without the term learner. And so what is it about this as one of the 34 Clifton strengths that Dr. Donald Clifton and his team identified as this is the strength of learner? And I'd love for either of you to take that and expound on it, because it has been a curiosity for some of, all right, you're curious. All right, you've been to 40, by the way, that's incredible, 40 countries. Yeah. And switching the major and multiple sports. There's so many questions I have for you, Lindsay. Like so many variances. And I've heard people say with learner, like, hey, if I get something gets stale, if it gets old, if I'm bored, I'm moving on. I'm I'm out. Like I'm into the next. I'm going. But there's that depth of understanding. Now for you, Jeff, higher ed, oh my gosh. Like I don't know. It's like if you're not a learner, you're like on the out. Like how are you, like you look at each other, how are you here? What are you doing here? This is like learners only. Like I mean, it's all over. So all right, you two. So there it is. You're about to represent all the learners and you're gonna tell us, how is this a strength?
Yeah.
Either one of you
I
can
was
go.
well, I was just going to say I resonate with what Lindsay said because curiosity is a big part of that for me too. Even going back to, little boy Jeff getting tucked in for the evening. I love the book Curious George. And I still have a copy of that because that so resonates. And I'll often say to people as I'm asking questions, I'll say, I'm just a curious George, so I hope it's okay you're asking me. But the learner piece for me has always been too, the learner piece for me has always been too, that even though it's a strategic thinking theme, it's very key to my relationship development. Because when I meet someone who I haven't talked to before, I don't know much about, if anything, I start asking questions. Hey, would you mind telling me about your family, or where did you grow up? Who lived at your house? All those kinds of questions that just kind of opens up the neighborhood, if you will, and gives them a gentle permission to say, tell me more about, I want to hear about you, right? And so a lot of times I'll give examples that, where you're leveraging a strength in a different area. I use learner a lot to really develop relationship, particularly with people that are new to me, just to learn more about them and show that I'm genuinely interested in who they are and what their story is.
I love that. I think for me, I'm all it's a superpower. So I'm always digging for the story behind the story. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan, and he talks about, starting with why. And I think great learners do this as well. So if you think about just something random like, who decided that we all needed 8 glasses of water every day? Like I had to know. It turns out that it's not even scientifically backed. And I think kids are also really good at this too. They never stop asking why. And somewhere along the way, we start giving up on those questions. And I make it a point with my own kids to protect that natural curiosity and answer all of the questions that they do have. And I think in this era of AI where we can get the answer to any question in, a second, I think the real value is knowing what to ask and how to think critically about the answers you get. And anyone can look up information, but not everyone can spot what's worth questioning in the first place. So that's how I think it's a superpower, that curiosity.
For both of you, I've heard it said so many times that the best leaders are curious leaders. The very best of leaders are curious and unassuming, not overstated. Don't try to be the end all. And I have always admired learners for their ability to do this. I think as leadership qualities go, I think this is one of the top leadership strengths that one can possess, because I feel that the superpower of learner is that they listen. I felt that I have seen and experienced the superpower of learner is what Jeff, you were describing, that curiosity. But for you, Lindsay, that not just accepting things at 8 ounces, 8 glasses of water, like actually, why? Well, how come? Well, where? And how the quality of decision making can occur, because it doesn't come. Some of the thinking strengths are a little more on the prove it side and a little hard edged on some of what they're digging for. Where learner has this open handed, I'm asking, I'm just inquiring, I want to know, I want to understand. And for many, that willingness to stay in that posture makes them very, very approachable. So I'm curious because I know for both of you, you have been in leadership roles for much of your career. And in that space, I want to connect learner with leadership. How has it served you? How has it contributed to your success in your role as a leader? And Lindsay, I'm going to come back to you on this one.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think just piggybacking off what you're saying with this natural ability to listen. I'm not naturally one that's going to be the first to speak up, and I don't lead with communication. And so, when I'm meeting someone new or welcoming, a newcomer, whether I'm in a room full of strangers, I instinctively, will start conversations by asking thoughtful questions and paying close attention to the answers. And I lead with a lot of relationship building themes. And so with that individualization, I like to collect pieces of information about people and it's just this like authenticity almost of, um, not just gathering facts for the sake of it, but showing up genuinely wanting to know more about them and, approaching them with warmth and encouragement. And it's also led me to get my coach credential as well, which I think has also helped me show up and with leaders that I'm partnering with, asking powerful, open-ended questions and getting them to come up with the solution on their own. And I think just again, this natural ability to ask good questions, listen, and then learn, and especially with those that I'm getting to know, building this deeper understanding of them and what makes them tick has helped me with leadership along the way.
Coaches and service-based business builders want to 10x your impact and income? Join the Strengthspreneur Mastermind, led by Brent O'Bannon, MCC, author of the Strengthspreneur 10x Workbook, and the world's first Gallup-certified strengths coach. This powerhouse group gives you personalized coaching, peer support, and proven tools to launch and scale your unique strengths. We meet 2 times a month. Come sharpen your strategy, boost confidence, and grow smarter, not harder. Visit podcast.34strong.com to thrive as a strengthspreneur. Again, visit podcast.34strong.com. Join Brent O'Bannon and thrive as a strengthspreneur.
Yeah, I think that those are some great points. Again, for me, the learner goes back to the curiosity, asking questions that I'll find myself if I'm having a first conversation with some people or a person, I might ask a question or two, and then I'll pause and say, hey, just so you know, I'm not asking questions because I'm questioning you or anything you're doing. I'm a curious George, and I just like to learn about other people when I'm getting to know them. So I'm asking you questions because I'm interested, because I want to know more about you. And again, that, like Brandon was saying, that kind of is a nice exhale if someone's feeling a little bit uneasy with, what's this guy asking me my questions? You're right. It's like, because I just met you and I'd like to know you better. And again, going back to the authenticity is, I have no motive to ask you questions other than I want to know more about you and your uniqueness and your gifts and talents.
That's great. Okay, so we've established that learner is a superpower, and you two add maximizer to it, and you add individualization to it. So that's pretty cool. I like those combos. And, then Jeff goes and throws some discipline in there. Lindsay, you got positivity with it. And you both play with some futuristic. Lindsay, you bring that pairing, right? The input learner. Is intellection in the neighborhood, or is that far off?
I can't remember where it's at, but it's out of my top 10.
Okay. Because I've just covered input and intellection a couple shows, and all 4 of those guests had those 3 in the same neighborhood. Very close and very common to see those. But the input learner is interesting to connect those two. I may ask you later how you differentiate those. But okay, so you two now go ahead and look at each other's strengths, and I'm gonna turn it over to you guys to start doing some back and forth and see where you want to take it, what questions you have, and begin to just unpack, because as we all know, every one of these Clifton strengths, these themes of talent, when you get it up to another theme, it creates quasi new theme. It has new angles and ways that it shows up. So I'm going to be fascinated to hear where you want to take it. So who's got first question? Who wants to go first, asking the other?
I can jump in.
All right, you're in.
Yeah, and I'm curious how it shows up with that strategic and discipline. I mean, I often find myself kind of jumping back and forth between, I'm going to learn this, and then I'm going to learn that. And then, I jump in the car and I listen to a podcast about this. Does it make you a bit more more focused on what you're learning and then actually finish that subject. But for me,
Yeah.
I have a bunch of books that I start and I never finish, for instance.
I think the discipline helps me with that, as a learner who also has strategic at number 2. I love putting together plans. I love guiding organizations with strategic planning processes, those kinds of things. And the learner serves that well. But I think, with the strategic built in, and if you pair, say, strategic and discipline, that discipline helps me to execute well most of the time, right? So if I have a plan or I have something that I'm going on, I have a mental approach plan, probably a written down plan in my journal that maybe was where it started. So I do leverage that discipline pretty often in a variety of areas of life, and certainly learners that. So my disciplines as a student when I was in grad school and since, those that discipline strength rather, that's where I can set up. I'd go like, hey, I have something due in November. I have to prep a talk for a conference in November. So I'm already back calendaring, when I need to start, when I need to have this ready at certain times. And so the strategic helps me do that. And I think the discipline is where I'm just kind of going, hey, let's go. It's time. So that tends to be a driver for me. What about you? What was that pairing there of maximizer or with your learner? What does that look like?
Yeah, and I have a feeling you and I are similar in this way and I often can when I'm coaching other individuals who have maximizer and individualization, I can sense that they're genuinely curious about strengths as well. And then also like looking at recruiting, what roles can I put this person in that is going to energize them and keep them excited, or what's unique about this person that, or how they're going to work well with this other person. So I think I lean on a lot of my relationship building themes to drive my learner as well. And I think that's what's gotten me into the role that I'm in today and my interest in coaching, just getting to constantly learn about other people.
Yeah. And that individualization that we both have is such, you go back to the superpower term. I often say, in fact, almost every time I do training with a group, that even though individualization is not my number one, I think a lot of times it's my most favorite. And the reason I say that is because I can see that uniqueness in someone. I can see that special something that nobody else has that they bring to the team or they bring to the unit, and really truly celebrate that and love that they are unlike anybody else in that way. And then for them to feel like they're seen because of that individualization strength. Again, when you pair that with maximizer or you pair that with learner, I just feel like it kind of gives me an express lane connect point with a person to feel like I see you. And I love that, just that aspect of our humanity. I was at my favorite coffee shop this morning, and one of my friends came in with her little boy I think he's maybe 2 now. And as they were leaving, he said, "Tell Jeff goodbye." And he said, "Bye." And she said, "Look in his eyes." And he looked up, said, "Bye." And I thought, oh, that's such good training, just to help him to have that connectivity with whoever he's talking to in a distracted age that we all know about, right? Just look in his eyes. I love that.
I think one thing, given that you have futuristic too, I think you might resonate with this, but I am constantly thinking about, 5, 10, 15 years from now, whether it be thinking about climate change and my kids, or AI. And I think with this combination that I have with positivity and, futuristic and learner, I see the bright side of what it could be hopefully someday. And, the things that we need to learn along the way to, have continuous improvement as well. And I don't see our jobs being, replaced. And I do see my kids being able to find good work someday. So I don't know if you think about that with your futuristic often, but.
Oh, yeah. My futuristic is always always pretty close to top of mind, right? I mean, like literally Sunday yesterday, it's the day I'm talking about. We were driving up to see our kids who live about an hour away. And one of my former students who is teaching out of school in Colombia called me because I had texted and said, hey, I'm thinking about going to Portugal and Spain next year and doing this hike along the coast. Is that something you'd be interested in, when you're back home from Colombia? So I'm already projecting to May and June saying, I think I have an adventure I want to go on, and how many people can go with me, right? So that my maximizer, my relationship preference, it was like, oh man, I could get 6 or 8 people to go walk across the western coast of Spain. How cool would that be, And I'm going into all the details and looking things up and housing and the whole bit. I'm like, it's 10 months from now, but that's how I roll.
You're excited to learn about the destination that you're traveling to, and then kind of how you can maximize and, find the best hotel and the best restaurants while you're there.
Exactly. And then I'm thinking about, well, I was first thinking maybe 6 or 7 friends could go with me, right? Which would be a blast. And I thought, what if I invited some former clients and said, okay, this is just available to 6 or 7 people. Who wants to meet me in Spain and hike the coast of Spain, and do some deep dive and let's grow together, Who knows? I might do it. I'm just crazy enough to try something like that.
As I'm listening to you both, I am curious about the travel and culture and language and just that how the learner just drives that. I am a travel aficionado myself, and I love to get ahead of any trip to take enough language learning to basics to get around. Just got back from a trip to Greece and learned enough to ask and say thank you and be polite and engage. And yet I have found when I travel or engage with learners, their energy is amazing to what they want to take in. And I'm just wondering if you both don't exhaust people with learner and maximizer.
Maybe.
Like, hey, we're here. We're doing it all. We're mad. Like, your itineraries must be unbelievable when you travel. Is there any truth to that?
Yes and no. I mean, when I travel, I try to find someone that I know in that location to really get the best of the best in that location. So when I went to Tokyo, I met up with a former classmate, and he took us to the best restaurant in Tokyo. We went and did sightseeing at some of the what's that movie? What's the fight movie? Yeah. Anyway, went to a bar from a movie.
Fight Club?
Yes. I couldn't come up with that name.
Well, we're not allowed to talk about it because you don't talk about Fight Club unless you're in Fight Club.
There you go. That's probably why I couldn't come up with it. But yeah, went to the bar, from Fight Club, and went to another place that was on a Netflix show. And so I think it was part of the learning before. I watch documentaries on things of the places that I'm going to go visit and travel. And then I find someone that's there. So I'm not just meandering around, to learn all about where we're going to and what's the best spot.
And you referenced your relationship building skills too. So the fact that you approach that way with a connect point relationship you have at whatever level to say, hey, I want to tap into your knowledge base. I want to tap into your experience, and that goes back to their learner to some degree. So, I think that makes a lot of sense with how you describe your strengths to really lean on that as well. Yeah. I think about, I was thinking about language. Brandon mentioned that. I mean, going back to 20 plus years ago, my first time really having an extended trip out of the country and just feeling so frustrated with myself because I didn't have any language skills outside of English. And I so much wanted to connect with the people beyond just, wave and smile, which there's value in that, of course, but I so much wanted to connect with them beyond just the nonverbals. And I remember trying to pick things up and picking things up over the couple of weeks, but then coming home and registering, at the university where I already worked, registering and auditing a semester of Spanish because I was just ashamed of my monolinguistic existence. And I thought I could have had so much more connection with those folks if I would have had some basic greetings and questions like Brandon referenced about his trip to Greece, right? Why? Because I value relationship, because I value those unique stories, and that's the individualization coming out. So that's where I see the learner always being a go-to when I'm like, darn it, I don't know enough about that. And I dig in and I start searching and I start, pulling up apps to learn languages and all that kind of stuff, and go to work before I go on a trip because I don't want to just be zero when I get there.
So a little fun fact, I've used the language apps and had some good success, but I decided on this trip I wanted to try something different. So I asked my chat to become my language tutor. So I would say, I want you to take me to a language and I want you to walk me through the common words and phrases, test me in them, and then I would come back to it on a regular basis and it would pick up the conversation where it left off. So then it would tell me, okay, you've learned these words and phrases. Now let's try these. And, with remarkable accuracy with tone and interpretation and accent. So it was such a different experience because I've had good experience with the apps, but this made it conversational. So it was like hiring a tutor inside of Chat GPT. So did you? Yeah, it was fun. So, okay, I got to come to you, Lindsay, because I've just covered input and, because it's so common to see one with the other. And from my understanding of talking to former Gallup friends and people still there was a great debate on, were these really two distinct strengths? Are they really separate from each other because there's so many places they're aligned? And I've had many people tell me over the years, they're basically the same strength. Yeah, they're basically the same thing. So since it's 5 and 6 for you, I'm curious how you distinguish between your learner and your input.
Do you ever feel lonely as a coach or solopreneur? What if you had a place where you could surround yourself with like-minded coaches who truly get you, where learning, sharing, and growing together is the norm? Connect, Learn, and Share, started by Charlotte Blair, is a vibrant community of Clifton Strengths coaches from around the world. Hosted on the Circle platform, it's a place where you'll find people, processes, and events to help you grow your business, enhance your coaching and facilitation skills, and thrive in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment. Connect with coaches from diverse backgrounds and experiences. Learn through a calendar of recorded events across time zones, and share your knowledge in a community built on an abundance mindset rooted in strengths. Visit podcast.34strong.com to learn more. Again, podcast.34strong.com to learn more about the Connect, Learn, and Share community.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. With my input, I overdo it sometimes, and I collect so much information. You can't see it, but over to my left here, I have a whole bookshelf of probably 100 books, half of them on strengths. And I want to be able to collect this information to then share with other people. So how can I make my conversations more interesting, or how can I better, articulate information on strengths with the people that I coach, or how can I be better in my role, and what can I share? And so I think there is a clear differentiator when I speak with people who don't have input. They don't, like to share, potentially 10 different resources. And I think it's also an individualization too. I kind of like to customize it to each person. But I think for me, at least, input again is collecting and archiving this information that I'm saving for later. I don't necessarily, or I think some people wouldn't necessarily need to learn about it. And then that learning is truly how, the process of learning and really actually wanting to read and dive deep into the information that I do collect.
As you were talking about that, Lindsay, I thought about the curating of information. That to me, that's something that a person strong in input, whether it's they collect ideas or they collect books on specific topics. They're curating those. And then, the learner, yes, related, but is a bit different to the actual process of studying and, getting all that information to a point of mastery. I often will have people say, how this one and others, how are those? That sounds a lot, like relator and developer. That's another one. They seem like they're really similar. And the example that I've used for years now that at least helped me, I'll describe them by saying, there's certain strengths amongst the 34 that I feel they're like first cousins from the same family, right? So, yeah, mom's brother or mom's sister or whatever, these kids are from, the same end of the DNA pool, so to speak, in a good way. But they're different, right? So they might go, "Wow, you Williamsons, you're this and you're that." I'm like, "Well, we're first cousins, so kind of expect that, right?" So that is often how I've described those highly similar strengths: is we're first cousins from the same family, but we're not the same.
All right, so now I want you all to help us with how do we take this strength, and you're working with someone with learner, someone with learner, and you want to engage with them. You want to, get the best of it. Maybe you lead a learner, which I would tell most leaders you probably are, given how frequent this strength appears in the top 5 and across countries too. So this isn't one where it's regional. It's pretty broad. And so, given that both of your experience in leadership and teaching and mentoring and guiding, how do we support and get the best from our learners?
I think you need to organize your curiosity, almost build these learning collections. And again, this might be part of my input too, but we can easily fall into this trap where we're absorbing random information. I have been that person. I still am that person from time to time. I have to kind of reel it in, but endlessly binging podcasts or devouring books and like reading every article I could find, but it's chaotic. So I think I try to treat learning as if I'm building these theme collections for my brain. So if I want to understand what my clinical sciences team actually does, I don't just sit through a presentation and call it a. I might interview the team members, read a few key papers, or observe a case in the hospital with them, and even study the org chart. So I'm like collecting these trading cards, and each card gives me this new perspective. So instead of piling up, random trivia, you end up with this interconnected kind of almost web of insights that you can actually use. That's what I would coach people on with learner. How about you, Jeff?
Yeah, when I'm if let's say I'm coaching someone, a client who has that in their top 5 or 10, and I kind of do this regardless, but especially if someone has learner and as one of their top strengths is, I'll give them specific, prompts or questions to say, okay, well, next week when we meet up for our regular scheduled coaching appointment, I'd like you to look in, I'll send you these 2 questions, or I'd like you to read this article because I think you're going to find that it's fascinating to you because it's on topic. And with them having learner, they're probably going to mow through it in the next 24 hours and really have a pretty good idea of what it's about. So I have found myself more and more the last couple of 3 years of sending links and articles and things to like that during the week between appointments, just to add value, but more than that, to deliver something to them that they go, that is so much on top. We just talked about that, right? So sometimes I'll hear myself saying that, oh my gosh, I had to send this to you. We just talked about this yesterday. And it seems like it's always a good ad.
So any parting shots from either of you? Think about learner, think about what we've covered. Anything else that we can encourage our guests, our listeners or folks with just around getting the most of this amazing superpower, as you said, Lindsay?
Yeah, I think curiosity is what's going to be moving us forward. So it's never stop asking questions, that help us change our future, shape it. And I'm, again, putting that on my kids as well, like getting them to constantly just continue to ask questions and be curious. That's what I would I would say.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
My mind went to, with the semester starting in a couple of days, to my utilization of questions when I'm in a group training with a company or in a classroom with, 20, 21-year-olds who are marketing majors, is I really set the stage from day one that this is not going to be a monologue. I'm going to set the table, but you're going to need to scoot your chair up and come with some ideas, so it isn't just, read your chapter because you should read your chapter. Well, there's value in reading the material, right? Because it's foundational. And as a learner, I was like, I want you to lay the foundation, not so you can come in and I can just, read PowerPoint to you. I want you to come in so you have some concept of this idea of, automation and digital marketing or whatever. And then we can have a real useful conversation about what would you do with that, right? If you're in your job coming up, in a year and a half, here's the situation. So knowing what you know from your reading and your experience as users, what would you do with this? And I prep them that, we're going to talk about this and I'm going to get into all the talking. And so, I'm that guy. I want to maximize them, right? So I'll just come back and say, Brandon, I haven't heard from you so far. What do you think about all this? I know you have some good ideas, right? What about you, Lindsay? I can see your wheels are spinning, but we haven't heard from you. What do you got, And that's just how I interact with them to draw them out. So that's both maximizer and learner kind of going, come on, guys, you got it. It's in you. Just let it go.
I know.
I do get a little excited about it, right? So
I've always believed that learners make the best teachers. I really believe that because you're so you're so keen to continuous improvement, continuous learning, continuous.
Maximizers can't handle status quo, right? So we
think of that growth mindset. Learners are the embodiment of that mentality. Well, dear listeners, we have reached the conclusion of our episode today. Big thank you to Jeff and Lindsay for jumping on here and talking to us about learner. Lindsay, where can our listeners find you and what are you up to?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to find me. I am still working for my med device company and very ingrained in the world of strength there. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming and your wealth of experience getting to be a part of bringing strengths into one of the pioneer companies, really, that helped to take strengths and really integrate it. So thank you for bringing your knowledge and wisdom here. And Jeff, how about you?
Yeah, also LinkedIn's the best place to find me. You can also go to our website, www.convergegroup.io, and all kinds of information there about training and coaching, those kinds of things as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. And listeners, if you found value out of today's session and a learner in your life that would appreciate getting to hear this episode and grow in their knowledge of strengths, especially learner, please do share. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Coach to Coach.
That's a wrap on this episode of Coach to Coach. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're a strengths coach looking to dive deeper, join the Coach Strong community. It's where coaches like you come together to share insights, support one another, and discover partnership opportunities. Be part of the conversations that are elevating our industry. Email community@34strong.com to join today. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on Coach to Coach. Stay strong.